March 15, 1943. North Atlantic, 320 miles west of Ireland, the sea is black. Not dark, black. A moving, heaving void lit only by the weak glow of the moon and the faint orange ember of a sailor's cigarette cupped between gloved hands. The wind claws across the deck of U-631, dragging icy spray over the steel skin of the submarine as it pushes eastward through the mid-Atlantic. Oberstürman, chief helmsman, Fritz Langer, 26 years old, leans forward against the conning tower rail, blinking flakes of salt from his eyelashes. Every few seconds he presses a cold headset closer to his ear, listening for anything: propellers, aircraft, the distant hum of an escort ship. All he hears is the endless breathing of the ocean. Below his feet, inside the pressure hull, the diesel engines throb like a mechanical heartbeat, and in the control room, Kapitänleutnant Arvid Kruger, commander of U-631, stands over a chart table illuminated by a single red bulb. His face, thin, sharp, carved by exhaustion, leans closer to a penciled convoy track. Convoy HX-229 is somewhere ahead. A massive eastbound line of ships, tankers, freighters, transports, escorted by destroyers and corvettes. Kruger has hunted convoys like these for nearly 4 years. He survived the so-called happy time, when U-boats stalked the Atlantic almost uncontested, but lately, he feels something changing, and he's not the only one. A voice echoes down from the conning tower: "Nichts auf dem Hochgerät," still nothing on the hydrophone. The men exchange quiet smirks, the same joke circulating through U-boat crews since the war began. ASDIC. Sonar. The Allied toy that was supposed to find them useless, one of the radio men mutters. They turn it on, and they can't see anything beneath them. Blind as moles. Another chuckles. If they want to find us, they should just ask politely. The old confidence lingers: U-boats slipping under convoys, surfacing at night, attacking from the dark, vanishing before escort ships can react. Many of the younger crewmen still believe ASDIC is nothing but a clumsy British experiment, but Kruger knows better. He senses the ocean tightening around them. More aircraft suddenly appear on patrol routes. Destroyers react faster, hunt longer. Ships zigzag with precision. Someone, is feeding the Allies information the U-boats shouldn't be giving, yet no one understands how. In Berlin, admirals insist Allied sonar is still inferior. The propaganda machine mocks it openly, but in the darkened control room of U-631, with condensation dripping from pipes and tension hanging like smoke, Kruger can't shake the feeling that Germany's hunters are becoming prey. A messenger ducks into the room: "Herkelu, BDU just transmitted a new Wolfpack order." Kruger takes the decoded sheet: Wolfpack Robgraph. The robber count is forming, more than 30 U-boats converging on a single target. A massive trap. Kruger folds the message, his jaw tightening. "Very well. Course 145. Ahead full." Men move with practiced efficiency. Wheels spin. Orders ripple forward. The submarine cuts diagonally across the rolling waves, sliding through the night at 14 knots, but the ocean stays strangely quiet, too quiet. As hours pass, Langer notices something unnerving. When U-631 first left France, Allied escort propellers could sometimes be heard faintly, distorted, distant, but present. Now? Nothing. As if the ocean itself is holding its breath. He lowers the hydrophone headset, frowning: "Herkelu, it's odd. No contacts at all." Kruger steps up: "Probably just conditions," he says. But his voice lacks conviction. Then, at 2:14, the radioman stiffens. He hears it before he even reads it: a burst of rapid, angry Morse, British, unmistakably. A contact report, not far ahead. A British escort has seen something. Kruger snatches the strip of paper, eyes darting across the coded lines. A convoy escort reported a U-boat sighting and is already maneuvering to investigate, but U-631's periscope hasn't been raised in hours. They haven't surfaced near escorts. No aircraft have flown overhead. So how have the Allies detected them? Kruger's pulse quickens. He slips the message back to the radioman: "Dive. Alarm." The submarine plunges beneath the waves, sirens wailing. Men scramble down ladders. Valves hiss. Water rushes through flooding vents as U-631 sinks into the cold darkness. At 40 meters depth, the hull creaks with familiar pressure, the engines fall silent as electric motors take over, the lighting dims to a ghostly red, and every man suddenly becomes a statue, listening, waiting. They expect silence, but they do not find it at first. It's faint. A distant rhythmic pulse. Soft, regular, mechanical. A pattern too perfect for nature. Ping, ping, ping. The hydrophone operator turns pale. His voice trembles. ASDIC. British destroyer. Bearing 071, closing fast. The room freezes. A second ping follows. Louder. Sharper. More defined. Ping. 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 The destroyer is sweeping back and forth, sending out sonar pulses that bounce off the seabed, and off U-631. The crew exchange bewildered stares. This sonar sounds different, stronger, more precise. Nothing like the dull pings they used to mock. Kruger slowly lowers himself into the attack periscope seat and whispers, "God help us, they know exactly where we are." He's right, this is 1943, no longer the era of blind escorts fumbling in the dark. The Allies have upgraded ASDIC sets, expanded escort groups, and learned to coordinate attacks with deadly discipline, and tonight, one of those escorts is hunting with cold, focused intent. The pings grow rapid, an unmistakable sign that the destroyer is narrowing in. The torpedo room, sailors grip metal pipes for balance. In the engine room, men swallow hard, feeling each ping vibrate through their ribs. Ping. 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 The destroyer has a lock. Then comes the sound every submariner fears, the dull mechanical clank of depth charge rails. Men glance at each other, white-knuckled. Kruger whispers into the silence, "Brace." The first explosion detonates above them, far enough to feel like an earthquake instead of death, then a second, then 4 more, each closer, angrier, the water hammering the hull with fists of pressure. Bolts rattle. Gauges flicker. A pipe bursts near the aft battery room, spraying salty mist into the air. The lights flicker, the entire submarine seems to groan like a wounded animal, and in that violent shaking, in that suffocating dark, a terrible realization spreads among the men. The Allies are no longer guessing, they are tracking, they are listening, they are finding U-boats in places that once promised safety. The ocean has changed. And the hunters of the Atlantic have just discovered that they are being hunted in return. The destroyer circles around for another run, the pings tighten into rapid fire. U-631 has minutes, maybe less. Kruger grips the periscope column, sweat rolling down his temple despite the freezing air. He knows they're facing something new. Something no German admiral warned them about. Something that will rewrite the fate of every U-boat on the Atlantic. He whispers, barely audible, "They shouldn't be able to see us like this, not like this." But sonar no longer cares what U-boat crews once mocked. It has found them, and it is closing in. March 15, 1943. North Atlantic. 110 meters below the surface, the water around U-631 feels thicker now, mute, crushing, ancient. The hull vibrates under the returning echo pulses of the destroyer above, each ping slithering through the steel like a probing finger. Ping. Ping. Ping ping. The rhythm is faster. More deliberate. In the control room, the red lights cast long shadows over the men's faces, turning their expressions into masks of fear and sweat. Condensation forms under the pipes and drips onto charts, boots, hair, tiny droplets falling like a clock counting down to something inevitable. Maschinenmat, engine room petty officer, Johann Weiss wipes his brow with a sleeve stained by oil. He's been in the Kriegsmarine since '38. He remembers when officers bragged about U-boats slipping under convoys without a single escort noticing. He remembers captains laughing at British sonar, but nobody is laughing now. From the hydrophone corner, Langer whispers as if speaking too loudly might give away their position. ASDIC beam is holding steady. They're tracking us. The destroyer above, almost certainly a British Type 271 equipped escort, maybe a corvette of the Flower class, sweeps back across the surface, its sonar lancing downward like a divine judgment. Kruger keeps one hand on the diving planes, the other gripping the bulkhead rail. Depth, 115 meters. The plainsman calls out, going deeper means safety, unless they hit the red zone where pressure can crush the hull. They all know that limit is approaching. Hold at 120, Kruger orders. His voice is steady, but his knuckles are white. Another sound reaches them through the hull, the roll of metal. Heavy. Unmistakable, depth charges being set at their coming point. One of the youngest crewmen, 19-year-old Matrosenschreiter Engel, closes his eyes and whispers a prayer into his sleeve. Weiss sees it, feels a pang of sympathy, and puts a hand on the boy's shoulder. Then, to every man's horror, the pinging stops. Total silence. The destroyer has switched from detection to attack. A full second passes. 2.3. Then the ocean detonates. Wham! A concussion wave slams into the hull from the starboard side, throwing tools, coffee cups, and bodies into the bulkheads. Lights blink off, then on again. Steam erupts from a ruptured gauge. Boom, whomp, crack. For more depth charges hammer you. 6:31 in rapid succession. The metal belly of the submarine shrieks like something alive and dying, plates flexing inward before snapping back. A high-pressure pipe bursts in the forward torpedo room, spraying freezing seawater across the deck. Men scramble to clamp it, slipping on the flooding brine. In the control room, one of the battery indicators flickers dangerously low. Too much flooding and hydrogen gas will form. Deadly, silent, explosive. Kruger grips the chart table to steady himself as another blast shakes the submarine. The boat is losing buoyancy. Trim pumps, full power. He barks. A petty officer throws switches, motors whine. But the bow still dips. One of the gauges cracks, spraying a mist of fine glass across the navigators. Sleeves, depth, 130 meters, the plainsman shouts. That's too deep. Much too deep. Pressure at that depth can turn a steel hull into folded tin, but there's no choice. A sixth detonation rocks the boat, closer than any before. The hull rings with a metallic howl. One of the overhead lamps bursts, sending shattered glass raining over the crew. The destroyer is not just attacking. It is guiding its depth charges with precision. Better sonar, better tactics, better coordination. The German Admiralty never warned them about this. Kruger steadies himself, mind racing. The Allies are hunting like wolves now, working in patterns, triangulating U-boats with uncanny accuracy. Whatever this new sonar is, it isn't the clumsy British ASDIC they once mocked. He forces a calm breath and issues the order, silent running. All motors ahead. Slow. We turn away, bearing 040. The crew obeys instantly. Every unnecessary device powers down, every man slows his breathing, quiets his movement. Silence becomes their last shield. The submarine eases into a slow, delicate turn. For a moment, one fragile, suspended moment, the ocean calms. No pings. No explosions, only darkness and the distant groan of shifting steel. But silence can be worse than sound. Because silence means the destroyer is listening. Minutes pass, long enough for desperation to creep in. Sweat drips from brows. Men swallow dry air. The stress settles like lead on their lungs. Langer holds the hydrophone against his ear. Nothing. Then, softly, like a whisper rising through the black, pip, 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 shorter. Higher frequency. Faster sweep, not the old ASDIC, something newer, something sharper. A Type 147 or 144 sonar, one designed to track even silent U-boats. Langer's voice cracks. Herkelu, they've reacquired us. Kruger closes his eyes for a single second. Outside the hull, the Atlantic stretches infinitely in every direction. But for a U-boat under sonar lock, the ocean is suddenly a coffin. The pings tighten again. Growing louder. Closer, the men brace themselves against bulkheads, pipes, and one another. The destroyer positions above, the metal rails clank, the charges drop, and once again, the night explodes. March 15, 1943. North Atlantic. 140 meters down, the ocean detonates around you. 6:31 like a storm of steel fists. Crack, whump, boom. 3 charges detonate in perfect sequence above the bow, forcing the submarine downward in a sickening tilt. Men slam against bulkheads. A toolbox flies open, wrenches scatter across the deck like shrapnel. Depth 140 and falling. The plainsman shouts, voice cracking, alarms blink red across the control room. Kruger shoves his way to the depth gauges. 140 meters, pressure hammers the hull. Rivets groan. The steel arcs inward with a low, curling moan, as if the submarine is begging for mercy. At 160 meters, the hull begins to tremble, Hercule. The bow ballast tank is losing air. Kruger doesn't hesitate, blow the stern tanks. Now! A petty officer yanks the valve wheel, compressed air roars through the pipes. Bubbles blast from the rear ballast tanks, pushing the stern upward. The submarine levels out, slowing its descent, but the reprieve is temporary. Above them, the British destroyer changes its pattern. Langer's hydrophone headset jumps with noise, heavy propeller churn. Fast. Closing, they're coming in again. Same bearing. Then, 3 metallic thunks roll across the water, another spread of depth charges, the crew barely has time to brace. Wham, a blast to starboard sends a hairline crack racing across a forward pipe. Boom, a shockwave ripples through the battery compartments, knocking 2 sailors to their knees. Crack, a supporting rib near the officer's quarters bends under the force, creaking like a breaking ship mast. Engel clutches a pipe overhead, gasping for breath. His hands are trembling uncontrollably. He's been at sea only 2 months. Another explosion, directly above. Kathom, a fire extinguisher breaks loose and slams into a radio operator, knocking him unconscious. Lights flicker once more, then die entirely. The submarine plunges into blackness. The men don't scream, they don't panic, they freeze, because every U-boat sailor knows darkness means danger. Noise means death. Kruger grips the ladder leading up to the conning tower and shouts, "Emergency lighting, switch to blue." Dim sapphire bulbs flicker on, giving the compartment an eerie underwater glow. Weiss rushes through the narrow gangways, checking for ruptures. In the aft compartments, one of the diesel exhaust valves has cracked. Seawater trickles in, slow, but steady. The destroyer above circles again. Langer listens, jaw clenched, breath shallow. The sonar pings return, tighter than before. Ping, ping. Ping ping ping, Hercule. ASDIC is locking on faster. They're adjusting for our maneuvers. Kruger curses under his breath, this is no lucky escort, these are trained hunters, and they're listening to every movement you. 631 makes. Then, the radioman, his voice shaking, calls out, signals traffic, Hercule. Allied chatter. Multiple escorts converging on this location. The color drains from Kruger's face. This isn't one destroyer hunting alone, this is part of a pattern. A plan. A net tightening around them. He grabs the radio transcript. The British transmissions are short, coded, efficient. But the meaning is clear, more escorts are coming. He looks toward the forward compartment where Engel leans against a bulkhead, whispering feverish prayers. Weiss returns from the aft section, face grim, flooding contained, but if the next run gets closer, we'll lose the stern batteries. And then, he doesn't finish. He doesn't have to. Kruger nods once and turns to the crew, his voice firm and controlled. We won't survive a third attack if we stay deep. We go up. Slowly. Silent running. The men exchange wide-eyed looks. To rise is to risk detection, but to stay is to drown. Kruger grips the periscope support with both hands. Planes, 5 degrees up angle. Motors ahead slow, very slow. The submarine begins to rise. 141 meters, the hull continues to creak, but the pressure decreases just enough for the men to breathe slightly easier. For a moment, just a moment, it feels like hope. Then Langer stiffens, his eyes widen. Hercule, the destroyer is accelerating. They've predicted our ascent. Above them, the hunters are not searching randomly, they are positioning perfectly. A new sound suddenly vibrates through the hull, not the broad ping of standard ASDIC, but a sharper, more focused snap of tone, something far more precise. Kruger's blood runs cold. That's not old sonar. That's not even the early war British set. That's the new 147B sword horizontal fan sonar. The kind that can track a submarine even while depth charges are in the water, and U-631 is rising directly into its path. Weiss whispers, almost inaudibly. They know exactly where we're going. The destroyer positions itself overhead, the rails clank again. 12 depth charges roll into the sea. A full pattern. A kill shot. Kruger shouts, all hands, brace for impact. The ocean erupts, the hull screams, the lights fail, and for a second, in the crushing darkness, UP 631 seems to stop existing altogether. March 15, 1943. North Atlantic. 130 meters down, falling fast, the world becomes noise, not sound, noise, crushing, roaring, shuddering chaos. The kind that swallows thought, breath, and courage. Kathom, the first charge detonates almost directly above the bridge area. The shockwave slams downward like a giant's fist, jarring every rib of the submarine. WWII, a second, even closer, detonates off the port rear quadrant, bending a supporting beam inward until it screeches like a dying creature. Thrum crack, a third goes off beneath the keel, lifting the entire submarine for a split second before gravity drags it back down. Steel rains from overhead panels. Rivets shear off like bullets. A toolbox smashes through a gauge cluster. And a wave of superheated air surges forward from the battery compartments. The hull groans. Deck plates jump beneath boots. Engel is thrown across the gangway, slamming into a valve wheel that knocks the air from his lungs. Weiss grabs him by the collar and hauls him upright. Atman, Junge, breathe. But Engel can't. His chest is tight. His hands shake uncontrollably. Another blast hammers the starboard ballast tank. Boom, whump, the boat tilts sharply. Men tumble sideways. Someone cries out as his wrist snaps against a bulkhead. The control room floods with shouts, flooding in forward compartment. Battery temperature rising. Depth increasing, 135 meters. Hull stress critical, frames 16 to 20 are deforming. Kruger forces himself upright, gripping a rusted handhold as the submarine lurches again. He scans the gauges. Half of them flicker. A few are dead. The depth indicator jumps erratically, the needle quivering between numbers as if unsure whether U-631 is sinking or holding. Another explosion hits. Closer. Harder. Crack, a seam opens along the port side, spraying a high-pressure jet of seawater into the electrics. Sparks erupt, blue-white arcs snapping across the control switches. Two men dive to pull the main breaker before the whole panel ignites. Kruger shouts above the chaos, report damage. Quickly. Weiss fights his way up from the aft section, coughing from smoke and fumes. Aft batteries holding, for now. But the starboard ballast tank is gone. It'll keep filling unless we surface or seal it from outside, and we can't do either. Hydrogen concentrations? Kruger demands. Weiss hesitates. His face gives the answer before his mouth does. Too high. 1 spark could turn the submarine into a fireball. Kruger swallows the dread knotting in his throat. This is no longer about hunting convoys, this is survival against a weapon the Kriegsmarine underestimated for too long. Above them, the destroyer makes another pass, the propellers thrumming like the heartbeat of a giant predator. And then, ping. Ping, ping ping ping, the sonar returns, sharper. More confident that IT has reacquired them. Langer says it quietly, like a confession. Herkelu, they're tracking us even through the turbulence. This isn't just ASDIC. It's something else. Something new. Kruger knows what it is, all the rumors. All the warnings. The whispers from returning U-boat crews. The British have new sonar. New escorts. New tactics. They no longer lose contact. The Atlantic is changing. How many escorts? Kruger asks. The radioman checks the scratchy, half-decoded traffic. 3. No, 4. Converging. A wolf pack was supposed to overwhelm a convoy, but this feels like the wolf pack is walking straight into a burning trap. Kruger gives the order he's been dreading: prepare for an emergency ascent. If we stay under, they'll crush us. The crew freezes, surface, into the middle of 4 escorts armed with radar, aircraft support, and naval guns. It's suicide, but staying below is slower suicide. Weiss nods grimly. We can't take another pattern. Kruger grabs the intercom microphone, steadies his breathing, and speaks loud and clear: all hands, brace for rapid ascent. Blow all ballast tanks on my mark. The destroyer's sonar pings grow louder. Ping. Ping. Pingy pingy pingy. The hunters above know they've cornered their prey. Kruger grips the ballast lever with both hands. His crew watches him, dirty, bruised, bloodied, exhausted, but waiting for their commander's decision. He feels the weight of them. He feels the weight of every U-boat still out there, advancing toward convoy HX 229. Men who believe they are striking fear into Allied shipping. Men who do not yet know the Atlantic belongs to someone else now. Kruger exhales, blow tanks. Weiss slams the valve open. A thunderous roar fills the boat as air surges into the ballast tanks. The submarine leaps upward, momentum slamming every man to the deck. Loose tools skitter like metal insects toward the stern. U-631 rockets toward the surface. 120 meters, the hull groans but holds. 70 meters, the water lightens from pure black to bruised blue. Engel clings to a rail, whispering, "Please, please." Then, WHOMPF, U-631 breaks through the waves, bursting into the cold night air like a breaching whale. Spray explodes across the deck. Engines choke on air, the wind howls, but the moment U-631 reaches the surface, every man hears it, the terrifying chorus waiting. Above, the wail of a destroyer's siren, the hammer of naval guns rotating. A spotlight snapping to life. Kruger shouts, "Upper deck, clear for action. All hands, move." But before a single crewman can climb the ladder, a second sound rips through the night, a high-pitched drone aircraft. One of the escorts has called in an RAF Liberator patrol bomber. The ocean around U-631 turns blinding white as searchlights converge on her hull. The trap is complete, and the night is no longer their ally, it is a cage. March 15, 1943. North Atlantic. On the surface, midnight, the night erupts in white fire. Blinding beams from two destroyers slash across the waves, converging on the battered hull of U-631 like accusing fingers. Spray glitters in the air, turning the ocean into a sheet of shattered glass. Sirens howl, engines thunder. A klaxon on the nearest corvette belts out a long, rising wail. Kruger throws open the conning tower hatch, drenched in saltwater and sweat. He bursts onto the bridge and is immediately stabbed in the eyes by searing searchlights. He flinches, shielding his face against the glare. The world above is chaos. A destroyer, likely HMS Volunteer, plows hard to port, bow carving a white arc as it moves to cut off escape. Another escort, a Flower-class corvette, races down the starboard beam, its deck guns already slewing toward the surfaced U-boat. Overhead, the drone of an aircraft grows louder. A dark shape approaches low and fast, the long, predatory wings of a B-24 Liberator sweeping across the moonlit clouds. Kruger feels his stomach drop. A surfaced U-boat in 1943 is not a predator. It is prey. He shouts into the hatch, "Bridge crew up, flak gunners to positions. Move." Sailors scramble up the ladder, some slipping, others limping from injuries sustained below. They spill onto the soaking deck, boots slapping against steel slick with seawater. Snow-like spray blasts across their faces as the submarine plows forward on sputtering diesels. Weiss climbs onto the Wintergarten platform, gripping the railing with knuckles cracked and bleeding. His eyes catch the silhouette of the approaching Liberator aircraft closing, distance 800 meters. Kruger raises his binoculars and sees it clearly now. The belly of the bomber is open. Inside, a cluster of cylindrical shapes, depth bombs, weights like eggs in a steel nest. The Liberator is lining up for a perfect run. Kruger curses under his breath. The destroyers are hurting them, the aircraft is finishing them, and the Atlantic itself feels hostile. Wind slashing at faces, waves bucking the deck, spray driving into eyes like needles. Below decks, Engel holds onto a stanchion as the boat pitches, gasping for breath. The compartment reeks of battery fumes, diesel exhaust, and fear. He hears the muffled shouts from above. "Flak gun, ready. Traverse left. Aircraft at 11 o'clock. Then a metallic clank as the 20mm cannon is loaded. Kruger slams the bridge rail, fire at will. "Bring that bastard down." The flak gunner, lips curled back in something between fury and terror, squeezes the trigger. Braka 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 braka. Spent casings dance across the Wintergarten like golden hail. Tracer round streak toward the bomber, thin orange line slicing up into the night. A few come close, illuminating the underside of the Liberator in ghostly flashes, but the bomber doesn't flinch. It continues its approach, steady, disciplined, unshaken by the metal stinging its wings. Weiss screams over the wind, destroyer to starboard, 200 meters. They're preparing to ram. Kruger's heart jolts, ramming. A desperate, and brutally effective, tactic used when an escort wants to ensure a kill. On the starboard beam, the destroyer's bow lifts and falls through the waves like the head of a charging bull. Searchlights blind the U-boat crew, the reflection turning the sea into a sheet of white fire glare. The corvette on port side begins firing star shells, each one bursting overhead in blinding blossoms that float down like burning parachutes. Light, more light, too much light, there is no darkness left to hide in. The Liberator dips lower, Weiss shouts, bomb bay doors open. The bomber roars overhead, close enough for Kruger to see the pilot's silhouette, then, whistle, 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 for depth bombs drop directly over you. 6:31. Kruger screams, hard to port. Dive, dive. Get her under. But it's too late, the bombs hit the water with soft, almost polite splashes. 1 second. 2.3 ka boom, the first bomb detonates just off the port bow, throwing a geyser of water 40 meters high. Boom whump, the second rips into the starboard hull, shattering the railing and hurling 3 sailors into the freezing sea. Crack ka. The third detonates directly beneath the keel. The submarine lifts, out of the water, bow tilting upward like a dying creature trying to scream. Engel is thrown 10 feet through the forward compartment, slamming into a battery stack. Weiss is blown off the Wintergarten platform, landing hard on the main deck. Kruger grips the conning tower railing as the world tilts, the sea and sky rotating wildly around him. The fourth bomb detonates aft, tearing open plating near the diesels. A fountain of fire and smoke erupts from the ventilation cowling. The submarine crashes back into the ocean, slamming into the waves with a gut-wrenching impact. Steam, smoke, screams. The deck is a chaos of bodies and twisted metal, and the destroyer, unyielding, keeps coming. Its bow slices a white path through the waves, gaining speed, preparing to crash into the crippled U-boat. Kruger's voice is hoarse, enraged, desperate. All hands, abandon ship. Get off the deck. But even as the words leave his mouth, the destroyer's siren blares again, louder, closer, coming straight for them. The Atlantic roars, the sky burns white, and death races toward you. 6:31 with a steel bow and roaring engines. June 15, 1943. Mid-Atlantic, 0304 hours, the shattered remains of the final depth charge blossom upward through the water column, their violence echoing through the hull of U-564 like a hammer swung by a vengeful god. Inside the control room, the red emergency lamps flicker. Pipes drip. Dials tremble. Every man can taste the metallic tang of fear on his tongue. Oberleutnant Zur C. Reinhard Suren braces himself against the periscope well, jaw clenched, his knuckles white. He's commanded this boat through storms, ice, and enemy hunter groups, but this feels different. This feels hunted. Trim pump failing, the engineer shouts. We're taking water in the forward battery room. The words slice through the air. Water in the battery room isn't just a leak. It's a death sentence. Seawater mixing with battery acid forms chlorine gas. A hiss begins. A smell follows. Suren doesn't hesitate. Ventilate the compartment. Masks on. Keep us level. Above them, the sonar pings return, steady and calm, almost indifferent. 0.4 pings per sweep. 0.4 notes in a requiem. The men freeze. They've felt this pattern before. A single ASW escort. Probably a destroyer. Skilled. Patient, she's pinging on our bow, her Kalu. Distance closing. Suren nods, breathing shallow through his mask. So. The Americans again. He gives the order, silent running. The clatter and clank of machinery ceases, fans stop, pumps stop, voices drop to whispers. The submarine is suddenly a coffin gliding through black water. The destroyer above, USS Leary, has no need to hurry. It circles with deliberate precision, its crew practiced at the choreography of destruction. Inside the sonar hut, an operator sweeps his headphones back into place, leaning forward with the intense, unwavering focus of a surgeon. He murmurs, contact steady. Bearing not changing. The sentence that every submariner fears. A bearing that doesn't change means one thing: the destroyer is headed straight for them. Below, In the bow compartment, Matrosenschreiter Keller tries to keep his hands from shaking as he checks the torpedo compensating tanks. He's 19, he'd joked just weeks earlier that ASDIC was British guesswork amplified through a tin can. He isn't laughing now. Water sloshes in the bilge under his boots, the metal hull groans as U-564 slips deeper, 180 meters. 190. 200, Hercule, the navigator whispers urgently, we're below test depth. Surin answers without turning, I know. He places one hand gently on the pressure hull, feeling its tremble, its fatigue, its warning. Above, the leery sonar operator calls out a final update, range closing. Prepare depth charges. His voice is calm. Professional. Detached, below, in the silent submarine, the men hear nothing, until the first pattern detonates. Boom, 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 the blasts roll the boat like a die thrown by an angry gambler, men slam into bulkheads, lights cut out, dust falls like snow, the forward section screams with metal tearing. A harsh, violent shriek that turns every face bloodless, the engineer staggers to his console, we've lost forward trim. She's nose heavy. The submarine pitches downward, alarms blare, Surin grips the chart table, knowing he has seconds to decide the fate of 46 men. He whispers, almost to himself, this is no longer the Atlantic. This is a graveyard. He straightens, blow ballast. Full rise. The order echoes through the hull, men rush. Valve spin, compressed air roars into the main tanks like a beast waking from a deep sleep. For a moment, nothing happens, then, slowly, U-564 begins to rise, but the destroyer above has already set its second pattern. The final barrage falls like a curtain, wham, crack, thunder, roar. A massive rupture tears through the bow, dark water surges in with unstoppable fury, the lights die, the hull screams. Men are thrown into freezing seawater, Surin is slammed against the periscope well, his vision blurs. He feels the submarine tilt forward sharply, too sharply. Keller, coughing from chlorine, gasps, Hercule. Orders. Orders. But Surin already knows the truth, the boat can't surface, the flooding is catastrophic. He steadies himself in the ankle-deep water, now tinted with oil, and gives the order that every submariner prays he will never speak, abandon ship. Surface emergency, everyone to your stations. The men stare in disbelief. To surface now means facing the destroyer, but to remain submerged means drowning. The crew moves, the ballast blows again, violently this time. U-564 rises like a wounded beast thrashing upward, meters turn to feet, pressure drops, the hull stops groaning, replaced by an eerie stillness, then, breach, the conning tower explodes through the surface of the Atlantic. A geyser of spray around it, the night sky is black, searchlights instantly snap onto the rising wreck like a spotlight on a fugitive. Machine guns chatter, tracer rounds rake the tower. Surin climbs the ladder anyway, shielding a wounded sailor with his body as bullets cut the air around him. He reaches the top and sees the destroyer looming, impossibly close, its guns trained directly on them. He raises both hands, Besatzung ausgebootet. We surrender. The searchlights hold steady, the Atlantic wind howls. One by one, men spill out of the sinking submarine and into the freezing black water as U-564 lists heavily to port, her bow dipping back toward the waves. The destroyer's captain gives a brief nod, spotlights shift, ropes are thrown. Moments later, the submarine's stern rises, almost peaceful, before it slips beneath the surface for the last time. A bubble trail surfaces, then nothing, just the Atlantic, cold, silent, indifferent. June 15, 1943. USS Leary, North Atlantic. 0440 hours, the wind cuts like a blade across the destroyer's deck as sailors haul the last survivors of U-564 out of the freezing Atlantic. Their oil-soaked uniforms cling to their bodies. Their lips are blue. Some can barely speak. Searchlights sweep the waves, not to hunt, but to make sure no man is left behind. A corpsman kneels by the young Matrosenschreiter Keller, wrapping him in a wool blanket. You're lucky, the American mutters, not unkindly. Another minute, and you'd be gone. Keller doesn't answer. He stares past the corpsman's shoulder at the dark patch of roiling sea where his submarine sank just minutes ago. It feels unreal, as if the ocean swallowed not just steel and machinery but everything he believed about the war. Behind him, Oberleutnant zur See Reinhard Suren stands with his hands bound, water streaming from his coat that he watches the destroyer's men move with calm efficiency. No mockery, no cruelty. It unsettles him more than hatred would have. One of the American officers approaches, a lieutenant with sharp eyes and a clipboard tucked under his arm. You the skipper? He asks. Suren nods. Reinhard Suren. U-564. The lieutenant extends a hand, firm, professional. Lieutenant Jack Grayson. Sonar officer. I'm the one who found you. Suren hesitates, then shakes his hand. A strange silence passes between them, the hunter and the hunted. Two men who, under different flags, might have shared a drink and argued about engines or navigation. Instead, one sank the other. Grayson gestures toward the sonar hut. You know, your people used to joke we just tapped wrenches on the hull down there. His mouth twitches in a half-smile. Guess it's not so funny anymore. Suren studies him. He sees no arrogance, only exhaustion, a weight carried by men who've spent too many nights riding the edge of survival. He answers quietly, no. It isn't funny now. Behind them, the first hints of dawn creep across the horizon, a thin silver line that turns the waves colder, harder. A bosun steps forward. Captain wants the prisoners below. They'll be processed after sunrise. The surviving crew are guided toward the companionway, limping, coughing, still dripping seawater. As they pass the railing, each one glances back over the Atlantic. The ocean looks no different, but something feels changed, as if the war has shifted beneath their feet. Below decks, the mood on the USS Leary is grim. The crew knows what they've done. They've won a victory. A necessary one. But after months hunting shadows and hearing only myths of U-boat menace, seeing the survivors up close, pale, hollow-eyed, barely older than teenagers, leaves a knot in the stomach. Two American sailors sit together in the mess, staring at the coffee cooling in their cups. Crazy, ain't it? One mutters. All this time, we heard the Germans laughed at our sonar. He taps the table. They ain't laughing now. His friend stares at the bulkhead, deep in thought. They're just boys, same as us. Above them, sonar pings echo faintly through the steel. Routine sweeps, habit, security. But now, the pings sound different, less like weapons, more like the heartbeat of an ocean that no longer belongs to the U-boats. I and the makeshift POW compartment. Suren sits on a bench opposite Keller. The young sailor trembles under a blanket, sipping a mug of hot broth. His eyes are unfocused. Suren studies him, wondering how many times the boy had repeated the old line, mock sonar, mock the escorts, call ASDIC, blind. Suren breaks the silence. Do you understand what happened tonight? Keller shakes his head weakly. We never had a chance. They knew exactly where we were. Yes, Suren says. They did. He looks around the compartment, blankets, lights, quiet, a strange sanctuary compared to the crushing terror inside a sinking U-boat. They've changed the war, Keller. The Allies. Their machines. Their tactics. This is not 1941 anymore. Keller's lip quivers. But, we were told. Suren cuts him off gently. We were told many things. He leans back, elbows resting on his knees. For years, our commanders believed the Atlantic was ours. That no enemy could truly track us. He nods toward the deck overhead, where the sonar repeats its steady pattern. But that was before this. Keller closes his eyes. The pinging seems to grow louder, sharper, inescapable. Back on the bridge, Lieutenant Grayson watches the horizon brighten. He exhales, fog rising from his lips. The operation log is open in his hands, every detail of the hunt recorded in precise Navy script. He adds one more line before snapping the folder shut. U-564 destroyed. Survivors recovered. ASDIC performance, decisive. He knows the war will rage on. He knows more convoys will be attacked, more submarines will attempt to slip through. But tonight, for once, the ocean gave clarity. A shift has occurred. A tide has turned, and somewhere in those cold waves, settling silently on the seabed, lies the steel carcass of a submarine whose crew once laughed at sonar. Now it is their tomb. Below, in the dim POW compartment, Keller whispers to Suren, do you think it will ever be like before? Surin closes his eyes. No, he says quietly, from now on, the hunters have become the hunted. The ship turns eastward, the sun rises, and the Atlantic, vast, merciless, eternal, carries the war into a new era.